Hi, this is Rev Ed with today's Back Porch Devotional from Genesis chapter 41, verses 39 through 45. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. And he made him ride in his second chariot. And they called out before him, "Bow the knee." And then they set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphanath-Paneah, and he gave him in marriage to Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. So Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. Well, this is just the most remarkable turn of events in young Joseph's life. For 13 years, he has suffered as a slave. He has been mistreated. He's been abused. He has been maligned. He has been put in terrible circumstances. And yet, now, he is effectively the prime minister of Egypt. He's gone from being a Hebrew slave in chains to now having a gold chain around his neck and Pharaoh's signet ring on his hand. It is an unbelievable change and a turn for him. And yet what's amazing is through it all, Joseph's faith in God's care for him has never wavered. Joseph showed a rock-solid trust in the Lord. And we have to give Joseph a lot of credit for this. You know, we have scriptures that we can rely on that tell us that God is trustworthy, that tell us about his long history of being faithful to his people. Joseph didn't have that. He had somehow the knowledge that God was with him, and that was enough. He understood that God was going to work things out for him without ever having read those beautiful words of Paul from the 8th chapter of Romans. For we know that in everything God works for good with those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Trusting that God is working everything out for our good, regardless of our circumstances, is what gets us through those circumstances. You know, when life hits us hard, we've got a choice. We can either respond in hope and confidence, or we can respond in doubt and bitterness. Joseph never gave in to bitterness. He never gave in to worry. We've talked about this before, but worry is a sign to us that we don't think God is going to get things right. And bitterness is a sign to us that we believe that God actually got things wrong. But we have to live in our hearts where Joseph lived, in full confidence in God's goodness for him. He didn't have the book of Proverbs to rely on, but if he had, he surely lived out the truth of Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. This is the rule by which Joseph lived, and it is the guide that led him to this place. He was faithful even in circumstances where it appeared there was no hope, there was no good outcome. He could have turned into a dark and ugly person, giving in to bitterness and anger. He could have, no telling what he could have done with his thoughts turned inward and being angry at God for his circumstances. Instead, he trusted God. He believed that God was with him. He expressed the hope that David put in Psalm 27, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" When we have that confidence, we can face anything because we know that God is indeed with us, and he's not only with us, but he will work things out for his glory and for our good, even though we can't understand how that is going to take place, what shape it might be, or how in the world he's going to get us out of whatever mess we find ourselves in. Now, we have to admit that a lot of the messes we get in are our fault, and there will be consequences for that. But in a case like Joseph's, none of this was his fault. He was wrongly accused. He was put in prison. He was maligned. And yet he held his head. He held his tongue. He held his hope. He trusted in God. He is a wonderful model for all of us who have a relationship with the Lord. And Joseph's faith ought to strengthen our faith. Because again, we have the promises of God. We have the promise of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, which has unleashed the power of the Holy Spirit in our lives. We have so much more to rely on than Joseph did. And yet we can look to Joseph as an example for our own situations. So whatever circumstance you are in this day, know that the Lord is with you, and He is working things out for your good and for His glory. Trust in Him, and He will act. He'll do things on His timetable and not ours, that's for sure. But He will, and we will give Him all the praise and glory for it. God's blessings be upon you this day.